Boker Tov, today's daf is daf Samach Vav, number 66 in Bava Basra. We learned for Achenical basis Rav Shapiro. Yesterday, the Brisa brought down that if you have a mikveh, and in the mikveh, you have a pipe leading into the mikveh, and the water comes by the pipe, even though it was rainwater, but once it goes by a pipe, it's considered mayim she'uvin, drawn water, and it passels a mikveh. Now, so what happens if the pipe, let's assume it's like a wooden pipe, and the pipe was first fixed into the ground, and then you carved then you carved it out. That's okay. It's like the floor of the mikveh. So he said the Brisa said that if you had it sort of reverse, if you first carved it out, then you put that pipe into the ground of the mikveh, that's no good because it was a pipe that ruins the mikveh. However, if you first stuck it into the ground and then you carved it out, so it's part of the ground of the mikveh first, then you carved it out, that's okay, it doesn't pass the mikveh. Who does that go like? So the Brisa said, the Gemara said, it doesn't go like Rabbi Lezer or like the Rabbanim. Which Rabbi Lezer and Rabbanim are we speaking about? So I'm just reviewing the Gemara that we had yesterday. If it's Rabbi Lezer of the house who said what? Rabbi Lezer says anything that's attached to the ground is part of the ground. He argued. In other words, Rabbi Lezer was really Rabbi Lezer, not Rabbi Lezer. Rabbi Lezer was the ton of our. It's really the ton of our Mishnah, explained the Rashbam, who said that if it's attached to the ground, it's like the karka of the ground, meaning the Mishnah had said that you include the mortar that's fixed into the ground, and when you sell a house, you include that too. Whereas the Tanakama of the Brisa said no, you don't include that. Not the machteshes that's stuck into the ground after it was already a mortar, and then you stuck it into the ground, you attach to the ground. It's not included. So it's not. It can't be Rabbi Lezer or the Rabbanan. Which Rabbanan are we speaking about? We'll see which Rabbanan, but the point is that it's not like Rabbi Lezer. Why? We're saying maybe it's Rabbi Lezer. It can't be Rabbi Lezer. If it's Rabbi Lezer, the house who says that when you sell the house, right, that you include that too. That shows that if something was originally kli and then you attached it into the ground, like the case of this mortar, which you attached to the ground, is now part of the house. So does it be Rabbi Lezer? No, because maybe over there Rabbi Lezer holds mocher b'ayin yafim mocher. The reason that the mortar, which is attached now to the ground, is included with the sale of the house when you sold the house stam. You didn't specify the mortar or not, it's included. Maybe because you sell it generously, nothing to do with the fact that it's included in the ground. And the Rabbanan say no, mocher b'ayin yafim mocher. In the case of the Rabbanan, the Tanakama of this Brisa, which is not like the Mishnah. So it's not that. Well, maybe it's the Rabbi Lezer of Kveres Dvorim, case of a beehive. Rabbi Lezer holds that if you have a beehive in the ground, it's like karka. You could say it's nikna b'kesef shtar chazaka. Metalton can be sold agav that. When you write a prusbul, if the lova owns just the beehive in the ground, you can write a prusbul on that, and it's not makabel tumah makoma. And if you remove any dvash, any honey from there on Shabbos, you're chayav for chatos. The Chum disagree with all that. So maybe it's that Rabbi Lezer who says anything attached to the ground is like the ground. And therefore, when you say over here that it's sinor shachakul b'sof kavo, if it was first a kli and then you attached it into the ground, that possibly because it retains its name of a kli, is it that Rabbi Lezer? Says no. Maybe the reason Rabbi Lezer says, in other words, when we say it's not Rabbi Lezer, we say this Brisa does not go like Rabbi Lezer. Is it not the Rabbi Lezer of the Brisa of the house? No, maybe not. Maybe Rabbi Lezer holds in mocher b'ayin yafim mocher. That's why it's included, not necessarily because it's considered attached to the ground. You're saying over here that it's sinu shechakol b'sof kavo. If possible, why? Because it retains its name of a kli. It's not part of the ground. So you say which Rabbi Lezer? It's not Rabbi Lezer. Which Rabbi Lezer are we speaking about? Is it Rabbi Lezer who holds that it's attached to the ground? In the case of selling, maybe that's because mocher b'ayin yafa. In the case of the beehive, maybe the reason it considers a part of the karka is simply because we have a pasuk which says by yaras dvash that a dvash is like a forest, and then you're chayiv on Shabbos for that. It's a special pasuk telling me that when it comes to honeycombs, that's considered attached to the ground halachically, not because it's really considered karka. So when we say over here in this brisa that it's sinor, which originally was a sinor, meaning it was originally not attached to the ground. It was originally a pipe, and you fixed it to the ground. It's still not considered part of the ground. Which Rabbi Lezer be saying that it goes like it doesn't go like Rabbi Lezer. It doesn't go like the Rabbanim. Which Rabbi Lezer? If it's Rabbi Lezer of the house, and you say over there that it's considered part of the house, then it's because if it's because we have a pasuk. So which Rabbi Elazar, when we say over here that you have a kli which is attached to the ground, it's not considered part of the house, part of the ground, and it apostles it. Which Rabbi Elazar's go like? So this is where we were up to yesterday, about halfway down on the page on Samach Vav. El Rabbi Elazar the daf, Rabbi Elazar of the board. The board, we say a daf. Daf means like a board or a shelf. It's not. Daf shenaf tomen. Let's say you had a board, that a baker's board. It's either a board that you kneaded stuff on, that you needed the dough on, or Rashbam says it could be it's a daf that was used in a chalon rava, in a window, right? In a shopper's window. What do you call that? When there's a window which displays the bakery. You go to buy a bakery and there's a window and it shows the stuff in there, and he's got boards or shelves on there. It's like maybe that's what it is. Either case, whatever it is, this daf nachtamen shakava, because let's say now you affixed it to the wall of the building, whatever. Elazar says it's tar. In other words, once it's affixed to the ground, it's karka. Karka is not matame. It's not matame. Chum say it's tame. Okay, money. Now over here we don't make a difference if it was first a board and attached to the ground, or it was in the ground, it was part of the building, and then you carved it out and smoothed it out. When you smoothed it out, you made it into a kli, just like in the case of the tzimor. But over here, he doesn't make a difference between whether it was originally part of the wall and you carved it out in the wall, or whether it was originally a board and you attached it. So that's the case. Money e Rabbi Elazar. If it goes like Rabbi Elazar, in other words, the brisa that we talked about, the pipe and the mikvah. If it's Rabbi Elazar, fil chaku b'sof kavod. He doesn't make any difference. He says that if it's attached to the wall or to the building, either way, it's considered part of the karka. So if it's part of the karka, either way you can't determine that it's you can't say that it's tolish, meaning it's considered part of the karka, because Rabbi Elazar doesn't make the difference. Rabbi Elazar says if you have a daf of a baker's board, let's call it a baker's board, that you fixed into the wall, it's tar, meaning it doesn't make any difference if it was originally part of the wall and you carved it out, or was originally a board and then you attached it. It's tar either way. So he says if a case of the mikvah, if it goes like Rabbi Elazar, so Rabbi Elazar shouldn't make any difference, even if it was originally carved out and as a pipe, and then you attached it. Either way, it should be considered part of the karka, and it should be no good. Again, we said if you carved it out and you put it into the wall of the mikvah, then it passes. But if you originally, before you carved it out and made it into a pipe, you took this piece of this board, this flat board or whatever, this block of wood, and you attached it to the ground of the mikvah, and then you carved it out, that's considered part of the mikvah. It's not considered a pipe. So according to Rabbi Elazar, if it goes like Rabbi Elazar of this case of daf of nachtomen of the baker's board, if that's the Rabbi Elazar that we're speaking about, it should make no difference. Even if you first carved it out and then you attached it, it's still considered part of the karka, and it shouldn't ruin the mikvah. Rabbanan, and if it goes like the Rabbanan over here in the case of the daf of nachtomen who say that it's tameh, this board, even if you attach it to the house, it's still tameh. It's not considered part of the karka. I feel kavod b'sof chaku nami. Then even if it was originally in the ground and then you carved it out, it was part of the mikvah and you carved it out. It should also be tameh. It should also passel the mikvah. Over here, it's a case of tumah. Is it tameh? Is makabel tumah or not? In the case of the mikvah, the question is, does it passel the mikvah or not? Is it part of the mikvah, or is it considered like a pipe? So who does it go like? That's what we're saying over here. Now we have this Rabbanan, Tan Rabbanan, that we started with yesterday about the pipe in the mikvah, and it says that if it was originally carved out and then stuck in, that ruins it. That's considered a pipe and ruins the mikvah. If it was originally part of the mikvah and then you carved out, it's okay. Who does it go like? It doesn't go like this Rabbi Elazar or like the Chacham. That's the Rabbanan we're speaking about here, not the Rabbanan previously. We're talking about this Rabbanan. If it goes like, if it would be like Rabbi Elazar says it shouldn't make any difference. Whether you carved it out first and attached it, then it's considered part of the mikvah. And according to Rabbanan, even if you attached it to the ground first and then carved it out, it should also be no good, because that's what Rabbanan say, that it's tameh either. In the case of the daf tamen, doesn't make any difference. It retains, it's considered a kli even if it's attached to the ground. As we'll see, because the Rabbanan say over here, kol mechuber lekarka is not considered karka. It says Gemara la'olam. We're 3 lines from the bottom of the page. The Gemara la'olam Rabbi Elazar. It goes like Rabbi Elazar. I'm explaining this all according to Rashbam. La'olam Rabbi Elazar. It goes like Rabbi Elazar. In other words, Rabbi Elazar who says over here that once you attach something to the wall, it's considered part of the karka, part of the ground. The shiny pshutik creates the tumor up on it. You know what he says over here? The truth is that brisa by the mikveh goes like Reb Lezer. According to Reb Lezer, it should be considered part of the ground either way. Either way. So he says, no, over here it's different. Shiny pshutik creates the tumor up on it. Reason over here why he says over here that the daf nachtom shekov v'kos Reb Lezer matayr, meaning really he holds that chaku l'besof kava, if you carved it out originally, and in other words, if you carved it out originally and it was a kli, it's still a kli, and that's why it's no good in the mikveh. The reason over here why he says it's tar, no matter what, even if you stuck it into the wall, is because here we're speaking about a board or a shelf which is made out of wood, and we have a cloud that pshutik creates a flat board. It's not makabel tumah. Why? Because it's learned out from when the pasuk talks about things that are tumah. It says kli'etz or beged or sock. It's got to be something which has a receptacle to it that you can fill it up or carry it. But something that's a flat board is not makabel tumah midaraisa. So the shining pshutik creates the tumah rabbanan. That's why Reb Lezer, in the case of daf shenachtomen that you stuck into the wall, Reb Lezer is taught matarit in all cases. We said if according to Reb Lezer, you matarit in all cases. So then in the case of the mikvah also, if you had the pipe and you stuck it into the mikveh after it was already a pipe, it shouldn't possible. It's considered part of the ground. The answer is no. It is. It's, in the case of a pipe, where we're talking about a doraisa, the mikveh, it's considered a pipe, and once it's a pipe, and it ruins the mikveh. Over here, Reb Lezer says it's tahor in all cases. In the case of the daf of nachtom, it's because we're speaking about a pshutik leitz, which is only tumid rabbanan, so therefore he's mekel. Says the Gemara Machlal the shiva the raisa. Now he says it's strange. So that means when we're talking about the case of the mikveh shiva, where we're talking mayim shuvin, that's a doraisa we're speaking about. Now the truth is it is a doraisa, but over here we're assuming the way the Rashbam explains that he says this is not a doraisa. Why? Gemara goes about kaimlan drabanan. We hold it's drabanan. Why is it drabanan? So over here the Rashbam says something which is not evident from the Bryce itself, and the Gemara in Baba Kama that talks about this brings down the same case of the tzinor, the pipe in the mikveh. Doesn't learn it this way, but he says over there, Rashi over there doesn't say it this way, but he says, you know why it's a drabanan here? Because we're speaking about a mikveh that was already a kosher mikveh. Remember, a kosher mikveh that's 40 saw of rainwater is kosher. Even if you add tons of mayim shuvin to it, tons of pipe water, from the faucet, doesn't ruin it. Either because every bit that comes in is puzzle, or because it's mostly every bit that comes in is buttle to what was there before. Whatever the reason is, Rashbam talks about that. But so therefore that's only a tumid rabbanan. He says v'mechlal deshiva daraisa v'kaimlan drabanan. It's drabanan because the mikvah was already kosher mikvah. Rashbam says near the bottom of the page that he says Rashbam says since the lashon is, Rashbam says about 5 lines from the bottom of the page. No, before that, before 5 lines, about 6, 7 lines from the bottom of the page, he says that that over here it's mashma that we're speaking about a mikvah that was already kosher. 6 lines from the bottom of the page. It was already a proper mikvah made properly with 40 saw of rainwater, and then you put it in. There was already kosher mikvah. In other words, if you have a mikvah that doesn't have 40 saw and you put pipe water into there, you take tap water in there, that ruins the mikvah, right? If you have to right, of mayim shuvin ruins the mikvah. If it didn't have 40 saw, once it has 4, so that ruins the mikvah min haTorah. But if you already had a kosher mikvah and you added mayim shuvin to it, that's only in a drabanan. But it's not a daraisa. That's what he means over here. Mechal deshuva daraisa. So this isn't a good answer. You want to say that the case of mayim shuv, the case of the mikveh goes like Reb Lezer, and that's why he says, if it was originally part of the mikveh, then it's okay. But if it was a pipe and he's stuck in it, it's not okay. Reb Lezer says it's always considered part of the karka, even if afterwards, because he says in the case of the baker's board that you put it in the wall, it's always tar. He says, you know what? The baker's board is only tumid rabbanan because it's only a board anyway, a wooden board. And here we're talking about a daraisa, but he says shoot mayim shoot. Gemara says, but the case of the mikvah is not daraisa because we're speaking about a mikvah that was already a kosher mikvah. It's not the pasha way to learn, because the pasha way to learn is postal as a mikvah, postal it before it becomes a mikvah. The way the Rashbam learns is that and it goes with the Gemara, after the fact. In other words, it was a kosher mikveh, and you added more tap water to it, it only oscils at Drabanan. Truth is, that's not exactly the halacha, but that's what the Gemara says over here. But so one reason is he says is, look, you want to say the case of the mikveh, that's only that's a daraisa. But we hold that it's a drabanan, as Rashbam just explained. But the top line on Amid Beis, but Amar Rabbi Yosef he says, "B'daf shel matachas machlokas." The machlokas in here, in the case of the baker's board between the Lezer and the Chachamim, is not by a wooden board; it's by a metal board. You know why? And Rashbam on the last line of the page says, because a wooden board, a flat board, is not tummy drabanan. It's not tummy at all. He says, take a look at the Rashbam in the last line of the page. How can you say there's machlokas over here by this baker's board that was inserted, that was attached to the wall of the shop, of the bakery, or whatever it was, that it's machlokas whether it's tahor or not? If it's a wooden board, it's for sure tahor. It's wood. It's a piece of flat wood. A piece of flat wood is tar. It's tar if it's normally anything attached to the ground, to the wall, is tar because it's mechuber lekarka. And even if it's not, can't be tamei because it's a flat board. A flat board is not makabel tumah. It's less tumah at all. So Rabbi Yosef certainly says if you had talking about a metal board is tumah daraisa. Metal board, if it touches something, tamei becomes tamei. So you can't say that. So we're talking about tumah daraisa over here too. So you can't say that the baker's board is drabanan and shuvin, and the case of the mikvah is daraisa. Just the opposite. The case of the mikvah is drabanan because we're talking about a mikvah that was already a kosher mikvah, and the case of the board is a daraisa. So what's going on? So the Gemara says lo rabbani. Now we come back and we say, you know what? This is the rabbanan. It really goes like the rabbanan over here in the case of the board. In other words, our case of the mikvah is really goes like the Rabbanan over here by the board, who says that the board is always tamei. Why? Because it was already a metal board before, and it had tumah. It was a kli before, and even if you attached it to the ground, to the wall of the bakery, it still retains tumah. It still retains tumah. So if that's the case, why? If it's always tamei, before it was tamei, now it's tamei. So why did the Rabbanan say in the case of the mikveh that if it was first a board, and then it was first a pipe rather, and then it's stuck into the ground, that's no good. But if it was originally part of the floor of the mikveh, and then you attached, and then you carved it out, it's okay. Then it's okay. Shani Shiva Drabanan. That's very good. Really, it's tamei. Really, it's considered a separate item by itself. It's not attached. But by the case of the mikveh, since it's only an issue drabanan, because we're talking about a mikveh that was there already, so therefore he's making. He says it was already part of the ground, and then you carved it out. Even though something attached to the ground is not considered like the ground, but since it's only drabanan, we're making. And we said if it was part of the ground of the mikveh before you carved it out, it's okay. So if that's the case, if you want to be makel because shiva is only drabanan, so even if it was a pipe first and then you attached to the mikveh, it should also be okay. It says no, shiny awesome because it was already a kli before. But over here in the case of the mikveh, if you attach the block of wood to the floor of the mikveh before you had carved it out, and before you carved it out, and now you carved it out, even though it's a kli like in the mikveh, and the Rabbanan say that something attached to the ground is not considered part of the ground. So it should ruin it there too. But since it's only Rabbanan, we're more makel over there. That's shot of the brisa. This concludes this discussion about the mikveh. We had a discussion about the mikveh. Mikveh that you carved out first. If you carved out the pipe first and you attached it, that ruins the mikveh. If it was in the ground of the mikveh first and then you carved it out, it doesn't ruin the mikveh. Who does that go like? According to Rav Lezer, anything attached to the ground is like the ground. So according to Rav Lezer, if something is attached to the ground, it's like the ground. We saw that both in the case of the house. We saw that in the case of the beehive. We saw that in the case of the board. Anything attached to the ground is like the ground. It shouldn't ruin it at all. So it shouldn't ruin it at all. Why does it ruin it even if it was attached to the ground before? But the answer goes like the Rabbanan, who say that something attached to the ground is not considered like the ground. It's not like the ground. If you have a metal board that was tamei before in the bakery and you attach it to the wall, it's still makabel tumah, still tamei. nor what. So the case of the mikveh, he's makel. If the block was attached to the ground before, since it's only talking about shuva drabana, it's only an issa drabana. If the mikveh was kosher before, so he's makel over there in that case. Boy Rav Yosef in the fifth line on Amid Beis. Boy Rav Yosef, make shaman. Now we come to a new discussion, but it's related to the mechuber lekarka issue. The mission machshir, and I happen to be learning machshir with my grandchildren now, Kolol Zaidi. So we learn like this: if in order for food to be mikabel tuma, it has to be detached from the ground, right? If you have fruits attached to the tree or strawberries attached, whatever, anything attached to the ground is not mikabel tuma. Once food is not attached to the ground, it can be mikabel tuma only if it's muchshar lekabel tuma. It has to have water on it. Water or one of the liquids, one of the 7 liquids has to do it. And it has to be in a way that you're happy with it. To happen by accident, you weren't happy about it, it's not mukhsh l'kabel tuma. Mukhsh means it's prepared, it's fit not from kabel tuma. Meaning that if a dead sheretz touched it, then one of the 8 shrots which are tame, which are matame when they're dead. So if it touched the food, it's only makes the food tame if the food was mukhshar l'kabel tuma, if it was fit from kabel tuma because rainwater touched it. And let's say some rainwater came down or water got on some stuff and you wanted it, but late you were happy with it at the beginning, but you weren't happy with it at the end. For example, let's say, just to give you a weird example, let's say it was raining and you were happy that it rained because it cleaned your car off, but it ruined something else, some food that you had left outside, right? It ruined it. So you were happy with the rain at the beginning, you weren't happy with it at the end. So the Gemara in Machshir, the Mishnah says over there, it's a Mishnah in Machshirim, that if you were happy with it at the beginning, it's also you're happy. It's makabel. It makes the food mukhsh l'kabel tuma even if you weren't happy with it at the end. If you were never happy with it, it's not. If you weren't satisfied with it, it's never mukhsh l'kabel tuma. So he says like this: make sham. Let's say you had rainwater. You were happy with it because it cleaned off, it rinsed off your itzrun. Itzrun is the lower millstone that we talked about, the lower millstone. Now, and we're saying over here, mahu. So mahu is wrong. What happens if you were happy? Oh, the rainwater came down. You had this filthy, disgusting lower millstone that you were been using to grind the food, and it has to be washed off. And it started raining, and you were very happy with it. Then you weren't happy because the water also attacked or came down on your food. Now, on your food, mahu. So the Ger says mahu lahachshir ben wrong. Would that also be machshel Isram, even though you weren't happy with it? So the Gemara says, what does this have to do with us? So I'll leave it to Rabbi Lazar. Remember, Rabbi Lazar says anything attached to the ground is like the ground. Rabbi Lazar is really the author of our Mishnah. Rabbi said that the case of the machteshes, the mortar that was stuck in the ground was first a mortar, then you attached it to the ground. Rabbi Lazar says it's included with the house because it's like the karka, it's like the house itself, like the chutzner of the house itself. The Chacham said no, it's not. The Chacham said anything stuck into the ground is not necessarily like the ground. So here he has this case over here in the case of Itzrabulin. You washed off Itzrabulin. Rashbam says it could be Itzrabulin, it could be anything else, except the Itzrabulin was normally in the ground and you had to be washed off. But it could be by machteshes also. And the same thing would be in the case of the mortar. Mao lahashus is wrong. I'll leave it to Rabbi Lezer. It's no question why. Because Rabbi Lezer says anything attached to the ground is like, remember, we said before that when does water machshir something l'kabel tuma? Only if it's attached to the ground. Only if it's detached. Well, over here, the water that you were happy with, that was first cleaning off the lower millstone. Well, the lower millstone, according to Rabbi Lezer, is attached to the ground. Anything attached to the ground is like the ground, even though originally it was a clean. But Rabbi Lezer holds anything attached to the ground is like the ground. So so to speak, it can't be. Even though we're not talking about the machshir l'kabel tuma, the itzrabulin, the millstone, we're talking about machshir l'kabel the food afterwards. But still, the original intent that you were happy with has to be happy on something which was detached, and this wasn't detached. So he says, "I'll leave it." It certainly would not be. It certainly would not be machshir the food that it touched afterwards, the detached seeds or food, whatever. It wouldn't be machshir them because originally when you were happy for the water coming down on the millstone wasn't attached because according to Blezer, if it's in the ground, it's not considered attached to the ground. So according to Blezer, it certainly would not be machshir l'kabel tuma the seeds afterwards. Questions according to Rabbanan. The Amri Eno Kakarka that say that what? That they call Mechubal Karka is not like Karka. So therefore, the Istrabulin is not considered, the millstone is not considered attached to the ground. The water came on that. You were happy with that. So do you say also that that these Rom would also be Machshel Kama? So what's the suffix B'chal Mai? So the Gemara says, we don't know. Rav Ram explains what's the question over here. Take a look at the Rashbam, about 8 lines from the bottom of the page in the Rashbam, not at the bottom of the page. That's Tosis in the Rashbam. Kiti B'chal Rabbanan Dila'el, the Pliga, letter of Blazer Machteshes. They say Machteshes Kavua, that it's not, that we said that it's not sold. There is a reason to sphere the called Tolish B'Sov Chavro. Anything which was originally detached and then you attach is still considered detached. Therefore, that's why it wasn't sold with the house. And we see the difficulty here is we're comparing selling of the house and what's included in the house. The question of who didn't lagabi hechsher tuma, we just say the same thing over here, that it's considered not attached. Certainly, when you wanted to rinse off a machteshes kabur the machshir that it works. Machshir is wrong. The alkoch tamayo gabe istrabol. The reason is the ami macher. Lav mishab chash mechuber. The gabe machteshes. The chash is considered. It's considered detached. So the reason by the istrabol is not because the reason why the istrabol that it's sold with the house as opposed to the machteshes, which is not. It's not because one's considered attached and one's not considered attached. Because it's the same thing. What's the difference if you have a mortar which is attached, which was originally not attached, and you attach it, versus a millstone which was originally not attached and attached? This it was already a millstone. It wasn't. You didn't build the millstone while it was attached to the ground. You had a millstone. You attached it to the house or attached it to the ground. The reason is because the millstone is made to be in the ground and the machteshes is not. But the point is they're both considered tolish, and therefore they're both considered tolish. Over here also, it would be mashnas rum. If the rainwater came down in the Istrabol and you were happy with that, and that was tolish, so word for this rum also. Bias, and by you sell it's sold with the house. When it comes to the selling of the house, the reason is not because it's mechuber or not, but it's considered part of the house. Considered or maybe the reason machteshes, the reason why it's not sold according to Rabbanan is because of mocher buying raw mocher, as we mentioned before. In terms of hechsher, maybe considers it like a test. So we're not sure what the svar of the Rabbanan is. When the Rabbanan say before that the machtesh is akfua, Rabbanan, not Rabbi Lezer. The Rabbanan say that it's not sold. Is it because ayin raw, or is it because it's considered tolush? If it's because of ayin raw, but it's really attached to the ground, so it wouldn't help over here to be machshir this wrong b'kabel tuma. But if its reason is because if the reason is because ayin raw, so it could be he does not include it because ayin raw. In other words, but legabe hechsher karka, legabe hechsher of zram, it's considered like karka, and therefore your kavanah was never for the water rinsing off something which is detached, and therefore it wouldn't help for this wrong. That's the question over here. Maybe he holds like there, he holds like a blood when it comes to the karka. So this question stands. That's how the Gemara ends off. Now back in the Gemara, 3 lines from the bottom of Samach Vav Amud Beis. Shalach Rav Nechemia Braid Rav Yosef LeRabba. Right? Nechemia Yosef sent this question to Rabba, and we always have this. Michael, you look at the first 2 words in the second to the last line. You can read that as Yosef Lerba also. Right? At least we had that several times. Right? So Shalach Rav Nechemia Braid Rav Yosef LeRabba Braid Rav Huna Zuti. He sent this one to Rabba, the son of Rav Huna, the short Rav Huna. Right? He used to say the cousin of my late father said that in the Nazis in the current concentration camp, my father was at one point in his life pretty tall compared to a lot of the other Polish Jews, and they called him the Langer, the long one, the tall one, So here was called the short one. And he says, "Well, I said this question. When this woman comes before you, that's why it's brought up here. You can give her Isra Nechas. Isra Nechas means 1/10 of the assets of her deceased father, even from the millstone, the lower millstone of their chaim. What do we mean by that? The halacha is that if a man is married to a wife, they have a ksubah. Right? Now, let's say he dies or divorces her, she's entitled to a ksuba, whatever it is, $200, $2 million, whatever they wrote in the ksuba. Besides that, she's entitled to mazonos, to what we call alimony, sustenance, whatever, after he's widowed the divorce. That's all part of the ksuba. That's all part of the Tanai ksuba. There's another thing that the rabbis added on, and they said, let's say the husband dies and he left a bunch of daughters getting married. Each daughter who gets married is entitled to 1/10 of his assets. That's called Isur Nechasim. It's not part of the ksuba. And the Rabbanan only made a takana that for karka. In a ksuba, yeah, you could take even from cash, whatever they have, a metalplin. Same thing for the alimony. But the special halacha that they said 1/10 of the assets are only from real estate. So he said over here this halacha. Nehemiah Braid Rav Yosef sent to Rabbah Braid Rav Huna, the short one, right? Rav Huna the short one. He said, I'm not sure if Rabbah was the short one or his father was the short one. He says, when this woman comes before you, she wants to get married, she needs a dowry, and her father died. And the rule is you only take 10% from real estate for that purpose, not the ksuba, not the alimony, not the sustenance, but rather you take 10% from the real estate. You know what? The millstone in the ground is considered real estate. The millstone in the ground is also considered real estate. You can collect it, even from the millstone of the lower millstone, because that's considered real estate. When I was in the yeshiva of Kana, they collected even from the tenants, the monthly rent. You can collect rent from there too. In other words, let's say you own real estate and it was rented out, and tenants paid rent. The rent is also considered karka. Like for this aspect, for her dowry, so that she can get married, you get 10%. Gemara talks about that. What happens if you have 10% of 10% is like meiser, So what's left? The last, 10% of everything. Then the next one only gets 10% of 90%. Next one gets 10%. But that's the way it works. Says the Mishnah. Hamocher es a chutzner. You sell a chutzner. Till now we've been talking about when you sell the house, what's included. Now we're going to talk about a chutzner. Hamocher es a chutzner. When you sell a house, mocher bottom boros shichmas. You include in the chutzner. You sold the whole chutzner. The chutzner has houses, has pits, has ditches, has caves. All of that is included according to the Tanna Kama. But not movables. Not movables. Anything movable, you had cars, you had things movables, you had tools, whatever, not included. If he said, I'm selling you the chutzner and everything that's in it, all right, then everything is included. Rashbam said before, everything means even asset, even things that are movables, but not food. Because food maybe he's moving in the neighborhood and he will take that with him. However, not included is that as a bathhouse. There was a bathhouse in the chutzner, that's not included. It's not considered part of the chutzner law, nor not an olive press. Not included. You sell there. You didn't sell any houses or anything like that. All you sold was the chutzner itself, like the airspace. And you sold the physical, the real estate, but not any, nothing on there. Nothing on it. You sell the chutzner. No, the houses and the pits and things like that is not sold. You just sold the airspace. The person's allowed to use the airspace, but not anything built in onto the chutzner. Tana Rabbanan, says the Gemara. Hamocher es a chutzner. Again, the Brisa is similar to the Mishnah. Sell the chutzner macher batam. You sell the outer houses. What do we mean batam achitzonim? The outer houses that border on the chutzner itself. Ubatam apnimim. The batam apnimim are the inner ones that don't border on the chutzner, that you have to go through. You have to go through the outer houses to get to the inner houses. So they're not included. In other words, they don't face the chutzner itself. They're inner ones. You have to go through the outer houses to not an outhouse, the outer houses to get to the inner houses. But they're all included according to the Brisa. Ubeisa chosos and sand fields. Sand fields is what they made glass from, right? Glass is made from sand. So there was, I guess, better kinds of sand that was used for glass, for making glasses. For I guess blowing glassware, it's all included. Also stores. You own the whole chutzner. And I sent me yesterday that there are cases where people own cities today. Even today, somebody owns a small city or whatever. Who knows where? Any stores open into the chutzner are also included. Again, if the doorway of the store opens into the chutzner, that's also nimkar sima. If they don't open to the chutzner, they open outside of the chutzner, and nimkar sima. Let's say it's open to both. Let's say there's two doorways, one into the chutzner, one not. So the gear says he takes out the veil. They're all also sold with it. As long as there's a door leading to the chutzner, they're sold with it. Blazer Omer, if you sell a chutzner, l'mocher ela milusa shchutzner. Milusa also means, like we said before, only like the airspace, what fills it up. Milusa Rashbam says it's avira, only the airspace of the chutzner. There's no other structures in there included. Amar Mar, you just said if the store is open both to the outside, like to say to the Rosh Hashanah, and it's also open to the chutzner, it's sold with it. Rav Chia learned the brisa that it's not sold with it. So which one is? We have two contradicting brises. Lo kasha. Hadrav tishmeshayu lagav. Hadrav mishmeshayu labar. Depends if most of the let's call the traffic, most of the usage or the traffic is towards the outside, then it's not sold with the chutzner. If it's towards the inside, towards the chutzner, then it's sold with the chutzner. All right, tomorrow this is really tomorrow's daf. On the podcast, it'll pick it up from here. And on Sunday, Mirz Hashem, we'll start with the Mishnah on Samaches Amar Aleph. Mishnah on Samaches Amar Aleph on Sunday. Have a good Shabbos, everybody. B'sorot tovot. Good Shabbos. Good regards to everybody. Good Shabbos.